Hello and welcome to the Palmore Institute's video lesson series. My name is Lowell and today we will be looking at the American culture class. So let's begin. In this video lesson, we will be focusing on Chapter 5 of our textbook American Ways, an Introduction to American Culture, 4th edition. And this particular lesson is about the heritage of abundance. So let's begin. Chapter 5 opens with a question. How did the abundance of natural resources affect the development of American values? And how is this abundance being redefined today? That's quite a long and complex question, but we can look at it from a couple different angles. After reading the passage in Chapter 5, it should become clear that when the European settlers first arrived in the U.S. in the 17th and 18th centuries, much of the land was rich, fertile farmland with an abundance of trees and animals. Through their beliefs, determination, and hard work, the settlers were able to develop or extract these natural resources to acquire wealth and material goods. Unlike the aristocratic European nations from which many settlers came from at that time, the material wealth and comforts of the ruling class were not guaranteed nor permanently determined by birth in the new nation. So basically, people were free to generate their own wealth and prosperity. The idea of equality of opportunity in America made the level of material wealth of both rich and poor much less certain compared to back in Europe at that time. But at any given time, the wealthy might lose some of their wealth, while at the same time the poor might increase theirs in the new country. Therefore, all classes in American society thought about protecting their material possessions, their wealth, their property, their money, and they looked for ways to acquire more wealth. Some observers of American culture, like Alexis de Tocqueville, who we've discussed in previous lessons, believed that this was not so much a matter of greed, rather it was a matter of insecurity. Americans might be naturally insecure if their material wealth and that of their children could change so rapidly. They could become very poor or very wealthy, upward or downward during their lifetime, or even a single generation. Thus, it was extremely important, both to rich Americans and poor Americans, to increase their personal wealth and material comforts. In the process of transforming some of the abundant natural resources that were available to many of the early settlers into material goods and wealth, Americans began to judge themselves by materialistic standards, how many things you had and the quality of the things that you had. Unlike many countries where materialism was viewed as a vice, a negative thing, or a sign of weak moral character, in the United States it was seen as a virtue, a positive incentive to work hard, and a reward for successful efforts. So it was seen as a good thing. Traditionally, Americans have been proud of their nation's ability to produce material wealth so that they could maintain a high standard of living. This sense of pride in producing or acquiring material wealth and maintaining a high standard of living helps to explain why Americans have a tendency to use materialistic standards not only to judge themselves as individuals, but also to judge themselves as a nation. This sense of pride also evolved over time, over the course of American history. In the 1700s and the 1800s, many Americans thought of themselves more as producers rather than consumers. Basically, a lot of people in the early days of American history, they created a lot of their own items. And particularly as farmers, they produced food and many of their own household goods. Later, as factory workers, they produced manufactured goods like cars and appliances that we use today. Later in the 20th century, Americans began to view themselves more as consumers rather than producers. This is likely a result of mass advertising and radio broadcasting starting in the 1920s and the spread of TV programs in the 1950s and the advertising that came with that. Through mass advertising, companies were able to reach large numbers of Americans at one time to convince them to buy their products, which helped pave the way for the dominance of consumption. Despite the fact that Americans have mostly moved on from being producers to consumers over the course of American history, Americans have learned how to develop the enormous amount of natural resources available to them and to use them not just to build a modern society, but also to feed and supply the world. At this stage in the evolution of America, Americans are redefining their abundance as a powerful supply of ideas and technology that can help bring solutions to the problems of the world. For example, if we think about Silicon Valley, there's a lot of new ideas, a lot of new technology coming from that part of the United States, and it's influencing other parts of the world. The belief in the continuing heritage of abundance has made Americans an optimistic, or very positive people with confidence that human problems can be solved. Most importantly, the belief in an always growing abundance has given strong support to such basic national values as freedom, self-reliance, equality of opportunity, competition, and hard work. For some Americans, it seems that their high standard of living is a reward for practicing these values. So they believe if you work hard, you deserve to live a good life with many items and collecting a lot of things or generating or acquiring wealth. Okay, for homework for this lesson, you can review some of the vocabulary for this lesson on Quizlet. If you're a new student starting from the beginning of the course, please do the before you read tasks on pages 100 to 101. Then read the Chapter 5 reading passage from pages 102 to 110 and write short summaries of each paragraph that should be around 1 to 5 sentences in length. Also do the tasks from pages 111 to 116. And finally, do the writing task on page 121 and write a short report on the topic. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below.